Okay, so get this. What if some UFOs, you know, those unidentified aerial phenomena we can't seem to explain, what if they were actually piloted by non-human biological AI?
Okay.
We're diving deep into a recent YouTube interview today, and believe me, this one is packed with fascinating claims. We're talking about recovered crash debris and technology that honestly sounds like it's straight out of a sci-fi movie, ready to explore the possibilities.
Let's unpack it. This interview really grabbed my attention, especially considering the interviewee's background. He claims to have worked with both NATO and Marconi on a project involving biological circuits back in the 1980s.
Hold on, biological circuits, like what does that even mean?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the question that immediately popped into my head. He describes seeing something he calls liquid bioplasma cells being used for data storage, which he claims are far superior to any traditional computer memory. And this is where his background in telecommunications and biological circuitry becomes incredibly intriguing.
Okay, so he's got this technical background, and he's claiming to have seen biological components being used in advanced technology. 28 years ago, no less. I can see why this has potential UFO connection written all over it.
Right. And it gets even wilder. He doesn't shy away from bold statements. He's claiming that biologics were recovered from crashed UFOs.
Really?
What's more, he alleges that experts working on this program call these biologics non-human.
Whoa. Okay, so we're talking about potential evidence of non-human biological matter, possibly connected to UFOs. And this technology, that, at least according to him, was being explored decades ago.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And this is where it gets really interesting. He uses the example of Lamborghini's nanotechnology car as a point of reference.
Oh, right. Yeah.
The one that can repair minor dents and scratches on its own.
Yeah.
He suggests this type of self-healing tech is just the tip of the iceberg. A hint at what's possible with advanced research and development.
It makes you think. If we're already dabbling in self-healing materials now, imagine what could have been achieved with potentially decades of research, perhaps hidden from public view. This concept of advanced, possibly hidden technology, it seems to be a recurring theme throughout the interview.
Absolutely. And this leads us to one of his most thought-provoking claims, that consciousness might be the key to controlling these advanced craft.
Consciousness, like our thoughts controlling technology. Okay, now this is where it gets really sci-fi.
He even mentions an experiment from 1982 where a rat brain was supposedly able to pilot an F-22 simulation. Whether or not you buy into that specific claim, it raises fascinating questions about the nature of consciousness and its potential applications.
So instead of joysticks and buttons, we're talking about thought-controlled UFOs. I can see how that would be a game changer, assuming it's even possible. But how does that even work? Like, what's the connection between consciousness and controlling a physical object? Especially something as complex as a UFO.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? He doesn't offer concrete explanations. But he does draw parallels to emerging technology here on Earth. Think about the F-35 helmets, the ones that allow pilots to control drones with their minds.
Wow. Like we're taking the first baby steps towards the kind of technology he's describing.
Right. But if we're talking about harnessing consciousness on a larger scale, controlling not just drones, but potentially entire crafts, well, that opens up a whole new world of possibilities and ethical dilemmas for that matter.
No kidding. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's go back to this idea of biologics for a second. What exactly did he say about what was found? And what makes experts think it's non-human?
He was pretty vague on the specifics. Unfortunately, he mentioned something about the material being analyzed by top scientists, folks who were completely baffled by what they were seeing. The interviewees seemed to suggest it wasn't anything like the biological material we're familiar with, hence the non-human designation.
Okay, so we're left with more questions than answers, which seems to be a running theme with this whole UFO topic. But let's shift gears for a second and talk about this concept of plasma consciousness. See, he throws that one out there and then doesn't really explain it much. What's the deal with that?
Right, so plasma is that superheated matter, the fourth state, like what you see in stars. Now, whether plasma can hold consciousness, that's a whole other ballgame. It's not exactly a mainstream scientific concept, to put it mildly.
So are we talking about sentient stars here or something else entirely? I have to admit, this is where my brain starts to go offline a little bit.
Yeah, he didn't go into a ton of detail, but he seemed to be suggesting that plasma, in its raw form, might be capable of supporting some kind of consciousness or intelligence.
Wow.
It's definitely a mind-blowing idea, and one that traditional science hasn't really even begun to explore.
It reminds me of that quote by Arthur C. Clarke. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic, We're talking about things that, at least for now, seem completely outside the realm of possibility.
Exactly. He even touches on this idea that the official narratives surrounding UFOs might be intentionally misleading.
Meaning what? That we're being deliberately kept in the dark. But why? Who benefits from that?
Well, he doesn't name names,
Yeah.
but he implies that there are those in positions of power who have a vested interest in keeping this information under wraps. And his reasoning is interesting. He suggests that revealing the true nature of UFOs and potentially non-human intelligence would be too disruptive, too paradigm-shifting for most people to handle.
Okay. I'll admit, the idea of the government covering up alien life is a bit out there for me. But he does raise some interesting points about how we tend to cling to our current understanding of the world, even when presented with evidence that challenges it.
Yeah. He seems to be pushing for a more open-minded approach, suggesting that we need to be willing to consider possibilities that fall outside of our current scientific framework. And, there are examples throughout history of scientific discoveries that were initially met with skepticism and resistance.
Like Galileo and the whole Earth revolving around the sun thing?
Exactly. It took decades for his ideas to be accepted by the scientific community. The point is, just because something seems impossible, based on our current understanding, doesn't mean it actually is.
Fair enough. So where do we go from here? We've got these tantalizing hints about non-human biologics, mind-boggling concepts like plasma consciousness, and the suggestion that we're not getting the full story from those in the know. What's the takeaway for the average person listening to this? Trying to make sense of it all.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? He doesn't offer any easy answers. And honestly, I don't have them either. But I think the biggest takeaway is the importance of staying curious, of asking tough questions, and of being willing to challenge our own assumptions.
He also mentions Jacques Vallée, the scientist who argued that UFOs might be something even stranger than extraterrestrial visitors, something that could potentially transform our understanding of reality itself. What did you make of that?
Well, Vallée's work is fascinating because it encourages us to think beyond the familiar, even beyond the idea of aliens as we typically imagine them.
Right.
He was open to the possibility that the UFO phenomenon might be connected to dimensions beyond our perception, or perhaps even some form of consciousness that we're not equipped to understand.
So not just little green men, but something potentially far stranger. It's a lot to wrap your head around. But let's bring this back down to Earth for a second. He also talks about recovered UFO debris being impervious to a blowtorch. I mean, what kind of material can withstand that kind of heat?
Right.
It makes you wonder if these objects aren't just technologically advanced, but perhaps even aware in some way.
He does suggest that these crafts might possess a form of conscious artificial intelligence, not just machines, but entities with a degree of awareness and the ability to react to their surroundings.
Okay, now that's both amazing and a little bit unnerving, right? It's like, what happens when our technology becomes so advanced that it starts to blur the lines between machine and living being?
And this ties into another point he makes about the potential dangers of artificial intelligence, even the kind we're developing here on Earth.
Right.
He mentions Elon Musk, who's been pretty vocal about his concerns that AI could surpass human intelligence and potentially pose a threat.
Which honestly is a whole other deep dive for another day, but it does make you wonder, if we're already grappling with these questions about our own AI, what about technology that's potentially thousands of years ahead of ours?
It's a sobering thought. He suggests that understanding consciousness, this force he believes might be behind some UFO technology, is crucial for our own development of AI.
Okay.
But he also warns that it could be the very thing that makes advanced AI so unpredictable, even dangerous.
So what I'm hearing is we need to be thinking about this stuff now. We can't just wait for all the answers to fall into our laps.
Exactly. We need to be asking the big questions. What are the ethical implications of developing advanced AI, especially AI that could potentially outthink us? And what does it mean to be human in a world where consciousness might not be limited to biological life forms?
Wow. It's like we're standing at the edge of the unknown, looking out at a future filled with both incredible possibilities and potential risks. This interview really throws a lot of big ideas at the wall, doesn't it?
It certainly does. And while we don't have all the answers, I think this deep dive highlights the importance of staying curious, keeping an open mind, and continuing to explore the mysteries that surround us.
Well said. If you're as intrigued by this conversation as I am, I encourage you to seek out the original YouTube interview, dive into the details yourself, and see what conclusions you draw. Until next time, keep looking up. and keep those minds open.
I would have been on top of the charts, but it's politics. You do some gimmick shit and post, you get a lot of clicks. Drop some real shit and they probably won't acknowledge it.